Number 5. SCP-2019. Our first SCP featured on today's list is Euclid-class organism SCP-2019. This sapient cubical organism appears to us as a green gelatinous substance held in place by a thick, transparent membrane. The cube stands 5 meters by 5 meters by 5 meters and is housed deep inside Foundation walls and kept unconscious through round-the-clock sedatives and fed intravenously. SCP-2019 is highly resistant, despite its unassuming appearance. Any damage it incurs, it regenerates quickly in a matter of seconds. On the forward-facing side of the cube, there are 37 eyes resembling human eyes. SCP-2019 is able to move these eyes freely through the membrane in order to see around itself in a 360-degree radius. SCP-2019 has been recorded to sprout tentacular limbs of sorts to allow itself to move. Now, SCP-2019 displays an interesting creation ability, being able to conjure physical objects and even organic beings into reality. The most occurring evidence of this power is its tendency to grow additional brains. During regular monitoring, it's been recorded to grow additional brains at a rate of once every 2 months under favorable conditions. In order to keep SCP-2019 docile, the Foundation has been ordered to always limit it to 1 brain at a time, with all extraneous ones being removed surgically. SCP-2019 is highly intelligent. Interviews with SCP-2019 have been illuminating. While SCP-2019 cannot verbalize directly, it is able to communicate with signs and visualizations, allowing us to understand it better. SCP-2019 has told us that it was banished by the rest of its species for being an outsider, and that its home is far away from here. Although it has been prone to acts of aggression around Foundation staff, it will still be contained for study and general protection. Now, as always, the Foundation thanks you greatly for your interest. If you'd like to stay informed and stay protected, please consider subscribing to Top 5 Scary. Number 4. SCP-2020. SCP-2020 is a Euclid-class entity, a sapient bipedal humanoid entity standing approximately 7 feet tall. It possesses unnaturally long and thin limbs, and I am not describing myself, and it most closely resembles descriptions of little gray men that have been reported over the years. It's likely that SCP-2020 or a member of its species are what was spotted during the Roswell incident. SCP-2020 is composed primarily of a natural form of rubber that appears to serve all bodily functions: musculature, circulatory, and skeletal. SCP-2020 maintains a very simple diet, subsisting solely on paper and water for sustenance. Interestingly, in all time since the Foundation began observing SCP-2020, it has not displayed any visible signs of aging or any signs of growth. Further studies of its biology have been halted, as SCP-2020 is surprisingly resistant to any tearing, so sample studies cannot be collected. Research has been temporarily suspended. Socially, SCP-2020 displays several behaviors common with humans, such as its desire to learn, its desire to interact with humans, and its bizarre semi-understanding of social cues. It understands and speaks English proficiently, even answering to certain names. It's quite friendly to Foundation staff and eager to talk. It claims to have originated from an advanced extraterrestrial civilization, but repeated questioning has produced wildly varying answers from SCP-2020 on the nature of said civilization, such as its technological prowess and other details. It seems most pleased when prompted to speak of its ideas for writing, often quite enthusiastically and jovially sharing its ideas for stories to researchers who are interviewing it. It claims it has a strong desire to be a science fiction writer. Slightly amusing to Foundation scientists, when interviewed, SCP-2020 is happy to share its many ideas, but never actually feels compelled to write any of them down, complaining that it's unable to choose a concept to focus on from its many ideas. Of note, during these interviews with SCP-2020 from Foundation members are that a number of its plot ideas for stories are rife with cliché and are often unfinished and quickly thought out. Nonetheless, researchers have reported finding 2020 a pleasant conversationalist, enjoying their sessions together. Number 3. SCP-2362. SCP-2362 is a Keter-class object and is the designation of the dwarf star Pluto, an interior Kuiper belt object. Public knowledge of SCP-2362 has been suppressed, intentionally of course, in order to decrease public interest in SCP-2362. In 1983, Foundation researchers uncovered that SCP-2362, formerly designated internally as Pluto, is an organic composition functioning like a shell for something, housing an entity hereto referred to as SCP-2362-1. It is an approximately 900-kilometer long object resembling a bell-shaped mass with 13 flowing tentacles behind it, most closely resembling a jellyfish. A research probe, Orpheus, was sent towards the dwarf planet in 2006 to confirm this hypothesis that the planet was actually an organic entity. The research was Fascinating. A fissure was detected on the surface of the object's southern pole, measuring approximately 50 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide. A repeated surveillance showed the fissure growing daily, increasing in size dramatically. As in a few weeks, the fissure grew from a meager 50 kilometers long to a staggering 950 kilometers long and 370 kilometers in width. After nearly 2 months of observation, 13 masses were spotted sprouting from the southern fissure. After 52 days, the fissure widened, revealing SCP-2362, splitting into 2 halves of one shell and releasing SCP-2362-1, the jellyfish entity. Now, SCP-2362-1's motives are currently unknown, as well as any of its biological functions or drives. What little we do know of it is that it is somehow able to propel itself through space by expanding and contracting its appendages. The current trajectory that it appears to be following suggests that it will leave our solar system within the next 100 years, and as such, it is not considered a threatening object, although it will continuously be monitored by Foundation probes for your security. Number 2. SCP-163. SCP-163 is a safe class object of extraterrestrial origins. SCP-163 is a sapient organism, standing roughly 6.5 feet tall. Its body is roughly cylindrical, with a circular mouth at the bottom, an approximation of a head at the top, and 8 3-jointed legs circling around the body. SCP-163 has many specialized unique limbs to its species, including 2 prehensile feeding limbs on either side of the mouth, 2 arms near the top of its body used for delicate precision manipulating, 2 larger arms located closer to its legs used for heavier manipulation, and 2 appendages of indeterminate function located between the legs and mouths, but it appears they have been amputated prior to SCP-163's retrieval. SCP-163 was discovered crashed inside a spacecraft in the Andes Mountains and discovered by local miners. The spacecraft had largely been scavenged, but SCP-163 had been kept encased, hidden in stasis. Upon discovery, the retrieval crews brought it to the Foundation, where it was given adequate accommodations. A receiving room with an airlock with room for guests, a storage room where SCP-163 is allowed to keep approved objects, a workshop as well as a dining room, and a sleeping quarters where SCP-163 can rest. SCP-163 displays very good behavior. Its outstanding good behavior is notable by Foundation standards. As such, it is allowed to take short sabbatical trips around the facility, accompanied by a junior researcher for supervision, of course. SCP-163 and any researchers present need to be equipped with isolation suits in order to prevent any cross-contamination between species. SCP-163 displays an advanced level of intelligence, a deep understanding of its own technology, and an ability to express itself artistically when given painting supplies, and has made several attempts to communicate with Foundation personnel. Difficulties have arisen, of course, because SCP-163 is unable to verbalize and only has a rudimentary ability to gesture by furrowing its skin slightly. One of the more docile entries housed by Foundation walls, SCP-163 has been an indelible asset in growing to understand our place in the universe. Number 1. SCP-1281. SCP-1281 is a large safe class object, a biomechanical entity that was found during a routine containment operation of SCP-2362, if you remember from earlier. SCP-1281 is a vaguely teardrop-shaped entity, measuring roughly 12 meters from end to end and 11 meters across. It's spotted with dish-shaped structures on the surface that presumably serve to function as receivers for electromagnetic energy. Several elements and fragments of other mechanical parts are present across the surface of SCP-1281, intimating that more appendages were present at one point, possibly having been damaged. The biological elements of SCP-1281 appear to have grown completely over a technological mechanical frame designed to live in deep space. It's theorized that SCP-1281 was designed for deep space interstellar travel, but a majority of its essential systems had been damaged by unknown sources. Carbon dating has suggested that SCP-1281 is upwards of 1.3 billion years old. SCP-1281 attempted several times to broadcast a message to Foundation researchers, initially broadcasting solely simple binary codes and mathematical concepts. Eventually, it was able to maintain a conversation with our researchers, where it revealed that itself had been sent to share a message from its creator. Paraphrasing slightly, it spoke of its home species and planet that had died off, and wanted to relay its message to other species to warn them, telling them that they must light the darkness. Through SCP-1281, which was known as the Harbinger from its species, this lost species is able to live on in a way, if only through the proof of SCP-1281. After this broadcast, SCP-1281 had asked its interviewer if it had done its job well, if it had performed well. It shut off shortly thereafter. The researcher told it that it did in fact do a good job, and thanked it for its service. The researcher was reprimanded afterwards for breaking protocol for provoking an emotional response.
Coming in number 5, we've got SCP-2662. This SCP makes its way out of containment pretty regularly. Thing is, it doesn't really want to. It would be perfectly happy to stay under Foundation custody until the end time, spending most days lazing about and eating on someone else's dime. Unfortunately, that'll never be the case for this strange, stretched out humanoid. 2662 is a 4-meter tall, tentacled individual who tends to wield some sort of psychic influence over the people that spend a lot of time near it. Lots of folks seem to become attuned to its wants and needs over time and feel compelled to act in ways that will please the creature. That's just the beginning though. If it were just a vaguely eldritch being who wanted to play video games and get the daily newspaper, the Foundation would probably label it Euclid. Hell, maybe even safe. These days, that's not an option though, much to 2662's chagrin. The secondary anomalous effect is the spontaneous generation of religious followings around once a month. 2662 does not choose to make these zealots appear, they just sort of do. So once a month, out of the blue, a group of crazed religious lunatics will attempt to break 2662 out of whatever Foundation site currently houses it. The weirdos then perform all sorts of nasty, violent, and sexual rituals that usually center our cephalopod pal. One such example was a group known as Towards Him, spelled H-Y-M-N, blasting into the containment cell, cutting their hands, leisuring themselves, and then drawing symbols on the walls with a mixture of blood and other fluids. 2662 was horrified when this was happening, but the group seemed quite pleased with themselves. This sort of thing happens often, usually with them taking 2662 out of containment when all is said and done. And no matter how many times the Foundation eliminates these groups, they come back in a different capacity with all prior knowledge of Foundation strategies intact. The poor anomaly just wants some peace and quiet. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-2006. As long as everyone follows the rules, we should be okay. Well, at least for a little bit. It really is only a matter of time until this SCP decides it's time to try something new. On a good day, SCP-2006 is an anomalous sphere that just floats around its containment cell. The one and only goal of this anomaly is to scare as many people as possible. Sounds pretty bad now, doesn't it? Add in the ability to shapeshift without any known limits, and you can probably see the impending apocalypse on the horizon. Thankfully, this being is gullible and doesn't really understand what people find scary. You can't read their reactions too well either. Most of the time, it'll try and jump out from around corners to shock new doctors and researchers. It also likes to take the form of Roman from the 50s sci-fi goof fest robot monster. It looks like a gorilla suit with a diving helmet bolted to the top. Not exactly the image of terror. Here's the thing though, the Foundation keeps 2006 on a steady diet of cheesy, unscary fiction in order to keep its curiosity sated. They bring in actors to pretend to be scared when 2006 transforms into rubber suit monsters for the 100th time. This way they can keep it satisfied, thinking that it has successfully terrified some humans. Definitely don't want it getting any bright ideas. Because the day it realizes that causing damage to the Foundation site would cause terror, it's game over. If someone brings in a movie that's a little too real-life spooky, we're all doomed. Hell, if it catches on that the folks it's been scaring are simply acting, it might attempt to do something more drastic. And with unlimited shape-shifting potential, it could break free and cause problems with minimal effort. For now, it's quite friendly with folks it's already scared, and the Foundation would really like to keep it that way. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-035. In order to keep this porcelain mask contained, the Foundation keeps it in a sealed glass case no less than 10 centimeters thick. The case is then placed in a room made of steel, iron, and lead. Doors are triple locked, and at least 2 armed guards are posted outside of the metal cube at all times. Nobody's allowed in or out under any circumstances. Then, every 2 weeks, it has to be moved to a new sealed case, and the old one must be disposed of. It seems as though this should be enough to contain anything, but it still isn't enough. There are slip-ups, and 035 has made it out on multiple occasions. It's constantly dripping corrosive fluid from its eyes and mouth, which will decay pretty much anything it comes into contact with. Glass seems to last the longest without totally falling apart, thus the thick glass case. Anyone who comes within a few meters of the mask will feel compelled to put it on. Doing so fries the brain and replaces their personality with that of the mask. The host body will then decay until it is no longer functional. When possessing a body, 035's personality shines through. It claims to have been present at many momentous occasions throughout history and loves to convince people to become its servants. It uses this ability to rally support and attempt to escape Foundation custody. Multiple escape attempts have led researchers to permanently seal the mask away, but this only served to make it angry. An aura of negativity surrounds the mask now, compelling anyone who enters the space around it to attempt suicide. All of the walls surrounding 035 secrete a strange black substance too, consisting of blood and unknown contaminants. The goop is highly corrosive, like the stuff coming out of the mask, and threatens the structural integrity of any room it's kept in. With both the negativity aura and the ability to summon secretions, it's only a matter of time before before the mask makes another great escape. Coming in number 2, we've got SCP-096. There's no stopping this one. If someone sees an image of its face in any capacity, no matter how far away they are, 096 will track them down and kill them. The pale, lanky humanoid will cross oceans, plains, and mountains to unhinge its terrifying maw and tear folks to pieces. It's been clocked running at 35 kilometers per hour and has been known to accelerate to much faster speeds. In fact, the top recorded speed has been redacted, so we probably don't want to know how fast it can actually go. The Foundation has attempted to contain it to prevent these violent activities from continuing, but to no avail. If it's compelled to find the person who witnessed its visage, it'll make its way to them no matter what, and in the process of doing so, more people are likely to see it and become targets. The only way to prevent this from happening is to terminate it, and that has also proven to be quite difficult. The thing has withstood anti-tank rounds, taken hundreds of 50 cal rounds to every part of its body, and kept trucking. You could tear all the flesh away from its bones and it would continue killing, so yeah, this thing is gonna escape, and it'll escape again. Thankfully, it seems to become docile after eliminating everyone who's seen it. This has provided the Foundation with ample opportunity to retrieve and safely place it back in containment where no one else can witness it. One of these days, though, there's gonna be a chain reaction of witnesses, and we're all done for. And finally, at number 1, we've got SCP-2845. So go ahead and read the containment procedures for this godly deer. Just go and see how complex and ridiculous it gets. There are morality plays performed featuring 6 masked figures. People are forced to drink half liters of olive oil before breaking boulders with hammers. Children are to be roasted and eaten, and more, all on a constant 63-hour and 54-minute cycle. A lot of ritualistic nonsense has been outsourced at this point, but it must be done by the numbers all the time with no mistakes or variations. Now that the ritual has been set, it must be performed exactly so for the rest of time. If this can be kept up, 2845 will remain contained. If not, the godlike creature will escape and transmute matter to its heart's content. This will be catastrophic for everyone involved. Really, there shouldn't be any way for the Foundation to contain this powerful entity. Any cage they could build would be immediately turned into metallic hydrogen and helium, and the beast would run free as if nothing had been there in the first place. But by divining this insane ritual and performing it forever, the deer remains in one place. One slip up though, and it all falls apart. Let's see how long they can keep it up. Ready to face any of these entities down in the street? Maybe bump into them as you pump gas, or maybe catch a quick glimpse in the background of an unboxing video? I'm sure that would spell doom for you, but wouldn't it be interesting? Coming in at number 5, we've got SCP-5320. You know when an inside joke goes a little too far and starts to alienate the folks around you? Yeah, well that's kinda what went on with this SCP, except the inside joke had to do with a fish that never seems to end and the weird cult that it spawned. When your top researchers are essentially posting and creating pointless rituals instead of doing their job, somebody's gotta step in. So even though this is a relatively harmless aquatic monster in and of itself, there are a lot of things that it could do to cause problems without ever leaving the comfort of the deep sea. As of right now, this creature is being described as an increasingly long snailfish, although no drones have ever been able to locate a head or tail. It's just all middle. The longer you look at it though, the worse things get. I'm talking about developing new obsessions and being more superstitious than ever. All because of an extra long fish, or as the folks associated with the Church of the Fish that just goes on forever like to call it, our merciful and long Lord, or its glorious infinitude, hail its everlasting fish body. Additional side effects of viewing SCP-5320 include a heightened awareness of the passage of time, increased interest in ceiling tile number, and increased use of the phrase long boy in casual conversation, even when referring to things that are neither long nor a boy. Personnel monitoring SCP-5320 have reported feeling an unusual amount of excitement upon seeing one of SCP-5320's occasionally visible fins, as well as a compulsion to loudly cheer. This odd behavior concerning those who are all for the fish raised some red flags with the higher ups of the Foundation. They launched an investigation to see if anything info-hazardous was actually going on, and the results are inconclusive at best. It seems that all this can be explained away by saying folks tend to get involved with silly superstitions and inside jokes, especially when they're working on something boring for an extended period of time. But it could also be that the fish is info-hazardous and drawing more people under its influence by convincing anyone who looks at it that it's all just goofery. I'd keep a close eye on anyone involved with the Long Lord himself, and even those only tangentially related to it. Coming in at number 4, we've got SCP-1836. Be careful while roaming the seas, you never know what you could run into. And hell, there are a lot of things out there that have been around a lot longer than us and probably have more claim to the stuff that lives in the ocean. We, as modern humans, often believe we can just do what we want with no consequences. This, as we're finding out quite quickly, is not necessarily the case. Take SCP-1836 for example, an enormous iceberg located in the Cunningham Inlet, colored green and containing all sorts of anomalies. The green color actually doesn't have any anomalous properties, it's just trapped algae. But the rest of the stuff I mentioned, you better watch out. So there are two parts to note here: a mass of long extinct toothed cetaceans and a humanoid figure that hangs out in an open living room style cavern within the iceberg. Basically a bunch of dinosaur style dolphin ancestors and a goddess with super long hair. If you get sensed by the creatures of SCP-1836 and you are hunting or fishing in the area, they're coming to get ya. The iceberg will accelerate towards the creature being hunted, and said creature will somehow know to head towards the iceberg. When they get close enough to each other, the iceberg will get between the hunter and the hunted. At this point, all of these cetaceans will emerge from the berg and attack the hunting vessel. If nothing was killed by the time the iceberg arrives, the ship will simply be sunk. However, if the hunters were successful in taking down some prey, these ancient creatures will not be so generous. They'll snag anyone on board and pull them underwater, bringing them to caverns in the underside of the iceberg. Nobody who has suffered this fate has ever been heard from again. There's a lot more lore to this one concerning gods, haircuts, and shamans, but I'll leave that to you to explore. For now, we'll leave it at a magical moving iceberg full of ancient creatures that will sink any ship that threatens local wildlife. I'd say that's a pretty sweet SCP. Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-1569. Anyone here ever been punched by a shrimp? No? Well, thank your lucky stars, because that is the last thing you want. Especially when it's a massive, weirdly modified peacock mantis shrimp meant exclusively for punching extremely hard. I'm sure you've heard of a peacock mantis shrimp before. They're famous for being able to absolutely annihilate stuff in front of them with extremely fast punches. If you put a regular one in an aquarium, there's a good chance that it will smash the glass by displacing water in such a way that it creates like a shockwave. But when you get one as large as 1569, you better believe it can cause a whole lot more damage. The big shrimp is 1 meter tall, 2 meters wide, and 9 meters long, and get this, its punch can strike with a force of up to 51,000 newtons. That would just vaporize someone, and imagine the shockwave. At first it appeared that this odd underwater entity had the intelligence of an average dog and was content to just hang out with people. Sure, it would go and absolutely pulverize some underwater prey from time to time, but other than that it just seemed like an extra powerful version of a creature that already existed. However, one day something weird happened. The shrimp went dormant and opened up like a living mech, and out popped the dude in competitive swimwear. And if I'm understanding the subsequent events correctly, this dude was essentially piloting this gigantic shrimp. Why? How? Was he the one acting like a dog? We may never know. But there is a special insignia on both the shrimp suit and the man inside, and it seems that there are some other strange connecting threads. Coming in at number 2, we've got SCP-2770. No good deed goes unpunished, am I right? And this is especially true when you're out on the high seas and come across what appears to be a stranded man on an inflatable life raft. Most folks would head right over to help the poor castaway, right? But did any of them stop and think about why he might be out there in the first place? Oh boy. 2770 is a strange phenomenon where vessels spot what appear to be a poor unfortunate soul floating along on a yellow dinghy. It will appear and attempt to flag down manned vessels nearby, seemingly looking for rescue. If the vessel it targets does indeed come over to pick him up, it will initiate what's known as a boarding event. This is when an anomalous submarine will surface nearby and open its hatch. Once this hatch is open, it's game over. The rescuing vessel, along with the dude in the raft, will be pulled underwater at speeds upwards of 200 miles per hour, never to be seen again. Well, the castaway will appear again, but the other vessel? It's done. There doesn't seem to be a limit on the size of things that can get yanked underwater by this anomaly, and it has been seen pulling truly enormous ships to their doom. One time the Foundation even scooped the stranded man up in a helicopter and brought him back to HQ away from any large source of water. They thought they were so clever until they remembered the water table. The Foundation site he was brought to is no longer in operation. And finally at number 1 we've got SCP-169, the Leviathan. There's nothing quite like this in the sea, so you'd better watch out. Sailors and mariners have been talking about this creature for centuries. It's the stuff of legends. What else could inspire awe at such a level and survive for ages and ages? At this point, the Foundation really has nothing they can do about it, so they just try and keep the legends, well, Legendary. It measures somewhere between 2,000 and 8,000 square kilometers and moves quite slowly under the water. Because it's so huge, there isn't really anything anyone can do about it. No structures can be built to contain it, and no weapons can be engineered to destroy it. Any satellite images of it shifting are to be destroyed. So sleep easy with the knowledge that it's been around longer than pretty much anything else on the surface of the planet and likely isn't going anywhere soon. Can't do anything about it, why worry?